14, the Land Use Recovery Planned Housing New Zealand Exemplar housing projects. Do we want the Housing New Zealand people to come to the table?
Is there any reason why we wouldn't?
Yeah. I do understand that there are some people from Housing New Zealand here. I wonder if you'd like to come and join us at the table. Thank you. Who's that at the back of the room? Who's that that's just come?
I don't know
Is
who
it,
that is.
is there one of
No
ours?
idea.
No, from somewhere. Hi. Well, first of all, I'll get a motion on the table that we can discuss. Who would like to move this motion? Glenn Livingston, seconded by Jamie Goff. So that puts the item on the table. I know that councillors have some questions around the Exemplar project status, but I wondered whether you would like to take the opportunity of introducing yourselves and just giving us a quick snapshot of your involvement in this. And yeah.
For our recovery efforts in Canterbury. And with me is Patrick, who's very much leading our planning side of things. So this is a planning mechanism which is very much coming out of the LURP, Land Use Recovery Plan. These two projects, one's in Brimwa, one's in Shirley. We have a lot of tenants who live in those two suburbs. These are two projects we've chosen as examples of new developments and very much in line with the provisions of the LURP to showcase new housing, new affordable housing, new sustainable housing with very strong community values. And really, in many ways, from our point of view, given we own 6,000 buildings, of which 95% were damaged in the earthquake events, this is exciting for us in the sense that we are building over the next 2 years 700 units, and these are very much in that space. But these are very important projects from our point of view, is that they not only showcase what is possible in both the social housing and the affordable housing space, in terms of not only the build form, also the interaction and the way buildings work with their community and community values and people's whole of life requirements, and also we hope they will prove to be exemplar projects in the sense that not only do they look good, are good, have low cost of ownership and work for people, but also we can get these things built, consented, resource consented in an efficient and progressive manner, so we can get these things in place, because we certainly need more building to be done for the right reasons in a quicker way in Christchurch. So that's my view on it. Very excited to be here, and we thank you for the audience. And we very much have good, really solid relationships with both the social housing unit within the City Council and also the wider council in terms of the community boards and the planning teams and so on and so forth. That's my view. So thanks very much for the opportunity. Patrick, do you want to refer to the planning context here?
Yes, I think, as Paul said, this is a response to what's been called out in the Land Use Recovery Plan. It's been quite a short time frame from that in December to the fact that 2 weeks ago you passed those decisions about what the exemplar expectations are. So we've obviously had a sense of what they might be as you've been developing those, and so those are that's the process upon which these two developments are going to be dealt with within council. So we see this on one hand a business as usual for us in terms of how we're looking to do development going forward, but these two sites are going to be in the exemplar space, providing a lot more visibility about how medium density will be working within Christchurch, particularly with a view to how that fits into the social housing, affordable housing space. We also, as Paul said, hoping to see that with that greater visibility of how these projects will be unfolding, some of the issues that are going to come out of how these developments are going to work through the consenting process, how we're going to engage in with the local community, making sure that we actually can get one end built houses and at the other end we make sure that these houses fit appropriately in their environment. So it is a short time frame to get from where we have in December to here. I know that it was an aspiration in the LURP that Council would be looking to approve on the 6th of March these exemplars, but the reality is we have not had the opportunity to get our design and our development partners on board at this stage to be able to present to you a full design. So what I understand the council is looking to decide on is just that these locations are the appropriate locations for these exemplars to occur.
And actually, we've got a staff member here, John, as well, so if you'd like to come and join us at the table too. And it might be quite useful just to talk about the connection with, what the council can offer, because I think there's two things. One is obviously the connection with the community and the design and all of those things, because the design-led component's really important, I think, to everyone here. And the second thing, though, is our connection with the consenting, because obviously we'll want to work very closely so that this can be an exemplar process as well as an exemplar project.
Yeah.
Yeah.
On the consenting side first, the Land Use Recovery Plan introduced a range of mechanisms that allow these types of schemes to go forward. So the consenting pathway is very clear. I think Patrick has clearly outlined the timescales that the LERP set out to get these schemes up and designed and ready to present to you. We're always challenging, particularly for Housing New Zealand in this first 3-month period. So the following the reports that we brought to you in coming months will deal with the details of how those schemes will look and feel and fit into their neighbourhoods. But really here the sites are being identified to you.
Yeah, and the community engagement side?
The community engagement side, the mechanisms that the LERP introduces do limit notification expectations, but Housing New Zealand's own engagement with tenants, will allow them to explore how the developments are landed in those areas, and certainly through this exemplar process, I think there is a need for, I think the council, probably ourselves, to explore how that will be discussed with the communities in which they land.
Yeah, I wasn't thinking of the formal notification. I know that there will be a greater degree of buy-in the more public and engaged people are in the process, and that was our experience in Aranui. The more people felt that they were involved in the process, the more that they owned it and the more input. The community helped decide the design for the houses and things like that, and it was the wider community, not just the tenants of Housing New Zealand. But anyway, I'll pass on to Councillor Glenn Livingston and then Yanni Johansson.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Paul Patrick, and also Vivian as well. I wanted to acknowledge you and the work that we're doing together. It's good to have that, both the formal structured memo of understanding plus the informal connection. But obviously you'll be picking up the density as an important issue for all concerned here. And when I look at the two proposals, if I've got my maths right, one works out at about 270 with 30 sites, the other at 191. And one of the criteria talks about medium density. So if we could tease that out today, I think that would be a good thing to do.
Yeah, sure. So the intent at this stage is to convert these two project sites. One has 9 houses on it at the moment, the other has 13, into 30 to 35 units. Part of that is a natural extension of how Housing New Zealand is looking at how it needs to reconfigure its portfolio to match its demand. And so we're looking at more smaller units that fit the needs that we are finding we have. The other thing, of course, is when we're entering into the affordable housing space, the smaller a house, the more affordable it is. It's pretty simple. And it obviously goes towards what the Land Use Recovery Plan has sought to achieve in terms of promoting the greater use of existing infrastructure in place through medium density in the brownfield space within Christchurch. So the design brief that we're putting together right now for those sites has an aspiration of 30 to 35 units for those sites, and it's to match that medium density expectation, which is smaller units with a mixed typology, and this is looking to have a mixed tenure as well. So it's not necessarily just to be 100% Housing New Zealand. It's looking to open it up with some affordable housing and some market housing in that. We have to be a little cautious about promoting exactly how that's going to unfold until we have our development partner on board, because the exact mix of how that works and the financial matrix that comes through that has an impact on how those typologies end up being determined.
Yanni Johansson.
I guess it's really a question of the chief executive, the acting chief executive, or council staff. But we were going to have a briefing, or we had a report on the land use recovery plan. It was put on hold. We're still waiting to understand what the changes that government have made to it are.
Yeah.
And I feel like this is kind of chicken and egg. Like, I appreciate Housing New Zealand want to get on and get stuff done. But then when I look at the executive summary of the report, it says proposals in Brimmer and Shirley have been assessed against the following criteria. And then when we read on to the assessment, we see that there's actually a whole bunch of assessment criteria that they haven't been assessed against because we don't have that information. So, you know, I'm really kind of puzzled around the process, why this is in front of us ahead of being able to actually do that assessment.
Sorry, which ones are missing from it?
High quality, safe and accessible, well-built, energy and efficient, innovation within the housing market, showcasing and sharing.
Yeah, but they will be provided by the time we sign off on the actual exemplar. This is just around the location that has been chosen. So there's another step to go ahead. I think that what Housing New Zealand are asking us to do is to endorse their selection of the sites that have been decided. That there will be further reports coming to us with the outstanding information on the Brynmore and Shirley projects. That's part of the resolution, that we will be receiving that information.
Right, so in terms of decision making, so we don't know what is in the land use recovery plan. We've got a report we're still waiting to get. We've got a mechanism that's in that plan that...
There is nothing that we don't know about the exemplar projects.
Okay, so the assessment criteria in the...
These are the assessment criteria here.
That's fine. And that hasn't changed in the land use recovery plan. So
It wasn't in the land use recovery plan. It's been agreed between Council and Housing New Zealand for the exemplar projects. Isn't that right?
No, it's the land use recovery plan.
Perhaps I could refer to the council back to a report that you received on the 12th of February, and you approved the exemplar criteria and the process in that report.
Right.
And that was necessary to enable this report to come to you with the level of clarity that is here today.
I'm sorry. We are trying to ask that previous decisions of the council are included in the reports themselves, so that we can follow the sequence of events. So I apologise.
You know,
I knew that we had that we had reached an agreement as to what they were, and I'm sorry I didn't have that in front of me.
So it seems to me it's kind of, you know, like I totally understand the need for housing and for progress and things to keep moving. But if you don't know what the bulk and the scale and the density exactly is going to look like, how do you choose these sites? So what happens if we get to the second stage of the process, which is, and that's why I was trying to understand the decision making. We agree to the sites so Housing New Zealand can go away and do the plans. They then come back and say, here's all the different assessment. We look at it and say, yep, we're happy, no, we're not. And if we're not, then I guess it goes through another process. If we are happy, then it then goes to consenting, and it gets through the consent and work happens. I don't quite understand at what stage do we see what's going here and have a chance to talk to our communities about what this might look like.
The issue here really is around timing. The LERP expects Council and all the other LERP partners to approve the two Housing New Zealand exemplars by the 6th of March. As has been explained, we've got to a position where the sites can be identified, but the detailed work has not been able to be brought forward quite yet, hence the request for you to receive further reports in the future. So really, I think this is more of an updating report saying, look, we've got to this stage. There is more work to do, but that's, it's at least, I think, letting you know that these projects are in train and we're working with our Housing New Zealand colleagues to move these forward.
And that
there
we
will be detailed
commit
stages.
as we're required to do to collaborate,
Right,
and
so-
which we want to do.
So how, what reassurance can we have that the scale of the development that's going to happen in these two areas is going to be done in a way that, is high quality, safe, accessible, well built, doesn't totally destroy the character of local neighbourhood, and actually doesn't put a big, 3-storey, 4-storey, 5-storey monstrosity.
In the further reports, you'll be given all of the details about the schemes, and clearly your view as to whether this scheme progresses in Exemplar is still a decision for council to make.
And if we say no, then what happens?
That's I guess the choice that council has.
Right.
Could I just pick up on the point at paragraph 3.7, which talks about being covered by the community housing redevelopment mechanism,
Which is a design-led mechanism.
That's right, absolutely. And if you remember,
And requires a buffer between,
Absolutely,
In the report we
key
got,
point.
that was to the last committee of the whole, which was left on the table, it did say that the assessment matters had been removed by the minister around these developments. So, that's why I was sort of referring to at the start. There were changes that were made that we haven't fully.
the assessment, what? Sorry, I don't know.
This was raised when the council met on the 13th of February, and I've looked back through that. Those urban design assessment matters remain a very firm part of both of these mechanisms, and will remain, to consider any consent relating to any of these sites.
Sorry.
Just a quick one.
Sorry, I had a list
on the
of...
Clyde
Hang on,
Road.
I had a list of people
plan.
speaking. I'm sorry, Phil.
Thank you. Overall, with the recommendations, I certainly support. I just really want to ask you about one aspect, and it's in terms of for one of our council objectives clearly is supporting communities and having communities cohesive, and we're aware that it's a government policy around Housing New Zealand properties. In fact, that when a renter achieves a particular threshold of income, that they would need to find other accommodation. We understand that. I'm just wondering, are there any ways that we can work with you, or that the government policy perhaps can be softened somewhat?
Yeah. I can't help you on government policy, I'm sorry. But what I can say is one of the objectives of these developments is to deliver affordable housing into Christchurch to the private market. So in the wider social context, I guess there's an opportunity for people of lesser means to have access to quality building. And it's very much part of the initiative here. I don't know whether that answers your question, but perhaps in part maybe.
Well, no, I do appreciate that you're like the messenger and can't account for the policy, but it's just, I guess, how in fact there might be some ways to interweave it so it's not the policy isn't too harsh on people in terms of being required to suddenly leave a property because they reach, they've done well with their job or something like that. And
yes,
they're specifics, I'm aware.
Yeah, reviewable tenancy, isn't it? I can't comment on that at all.
Yeah, sorry, I was because I got sidetracked on an issue. It's not a question that's in order for the council to ask of staff. Yeah, Pauline.
I just wondered if you, because I know your time's been set back, do you have a new timeline? Is there a problem with the designs? What's the hold-up? Have you got any idea of where
So just to put it into context, we've received 2 weeks ago the exemplar criteria.
Yep.
So it would be inappropriate for us to have proceeded down the path without having those criteria, which council has now set a fortnight ago. Yeah. So basically, from here, we are working on our design process, looking to go through our panel of development partners and select the appropriate people to work with them on the design. Long answer to your question, but what then has to happen is we end up presenting the proposals to our board. We're anticipating that to occur by the middle of this year, and that's the time frame. So we'd anticipate before that time that there will be an engagement with the local community as the design has been developed, so that they can be informing the process. What I'm really saying is we're still determining exactly how that's all being put together because of the time frame that we've just been working under, since we've only got those details a fortnight ago. But just to give you a sense of when are we going to get houses on the site, if things work to plan, we'd anticipate that would be into consenting process with council, the second half of this year, and looking for construction to begin and for completion to be next year. I can't say exactly at this time until the form of the building is confirmed, but middle of next year or the end of next year would be the completion time.
Thank you.
But that is not something that we can, we've not set that in concrete.
No.
We've communicated with our tenants about the process that we're going through. It's a site, these are sites that we're considering for development. So it's not appropriate for us to be putting timeframes out there at this time saying this is when construction's happening, because it also turns around and says this is when these houses need to be vacant. And that is not something that we've actually got set in place yet until we've been through our process somewhat more.
No, well, that was going to be another question, the communication with the tenants. But is that face-to-face?
Yeah, so it's done personally, face-to-face. We do a fair bit of this.
That's good.
Just generally, face-to-face, we do it as quickly as we can. So we want to hear from a person rather than from a neighbour or anyone else. It's incredibly important. And when you do that, it's amazing how positive the response is. And then we work through a range of different options for them in terms of what they want to do with location and where they want to live and so forth. Some take an opportunity to move somewhere else. Some like to stay in the locality. And north of 90% transfer to another house. Some other things happen in their lives, but we pretty much take the approach that we offer them something equal or better somewhere else. And people actually like to feel as if they're part of the development, particularly if they're in an older, cold and drafty house. They feel like that's good for them, good for the community, and they support it. But the crucial thing from our point of view is getting to them first and getting them personally and fronting up.
That's good. Can I just ask quickly?
We're running out of time.
I'm curious why they haven't used that corner of Skipton and Aitchison. Do you not own that property?
I'm not sure.
That's correct.
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you.
We would have probably one day.
Yeah, Raf, did you have a question? Yeah.
7, which is not included. Plan why is that?
We own that. It's relatively new development, so it's owned by Housing New Zealand. It's relatively new. 297. Yeah. Okay. So we wouldn't really want to redevelop a relatively good asset, but again, we'd need to integrate the development around that asset.
Yeah. Okay. No, that's fine.
Yeah. I would make the point there are various other ways of the other sites we could have chosen here. We chose what we thought were two typical sites because this is very much an example going forward. So we wanted a good example. And in terms, I'm not a planner, but in terms of all the criteria about affordability and amenity value and look and feel, again, despite what the planners may say and right, we know this sets the social example going forward. So to have that social contract to be able to do these sorts of events, we need to get this right up front, and so we know what that entails.
You're right, and if you get this right, it will make it a lot easier for everyone else. If you get it wrong, you're going to have a problem.
Yeah.
It's as simple as no pressure.
Ali Jones.
I just wondered how important knowing things like the quality of the builds, the safety of them, the accessibility, the energy efficiency, all of those things that aren't available information-wise at the moment. How important are those to the site? What is the relationship, if any, between those things and the site? Because I'm just picking up on what Councillor Johansson was raising.
Yep, that's a great question. So the site does drive a lot of these things. The more living space you can have orientated to the north is far better for thermal efficiency. Clearly, if there's a park across the roadway, it delivers public amenity into a private space. So that all does come into the site. And from a cost, from affordability point of view, the actual land quality is material as well. So again, if you've got a site with everything from great land to terrible land, you try and put the green space and the best use of the land accordingly. So the sites are very important. Some of these have got 2 different road frontages, which opens up a lot of possibilities as well. So the sites do drive a lot of what you can achieve. So, and to some extent, but on Councillor Livingston's comment, it does drive a little bit of density as well.
So you're confident not having that information at this stage doesn't negatively affect on the ability to be sure that this is the right site?
So the analysis that we've done is that we are comfortable that these sites can deliver those from our experience as the design is unfolding. So the matters that you raise, while they may be building specific, the locality, so what we're talking about now in terms of the selection is relating to quality of the land, its proximity to key services and activities, and such as transportation, recreation, and schooling and those sorts of things. And we're very comfortable that these two sites fit that those are the key issues for us to get us to this point. Beyond that, it becomes how does the design actually respond to the requirements that the exemplar list has been set out.
Paul?
Just want to take up Yanni's point. In our Earthquake Recovery Committee on the 2nd of February, we do have a point in there which says community housing redevelopment mechanism. Council's version of the community housing redevelopment mechanism requires a mix of all types and associated assessment criteria. Sarah removed this requirement and the associated assessment criteria. We understand that Sarah removed this requirement and the associated assessment criteria because they considered it may limit the flexibility of Housing New Zealand and other social housing providers to provide back types of homes they deem necessary.
And the point that Yanni made was that we deferred that report because it wasn't, there hadn't been an opportunity for the Minister to respond to the detailed issues in it. He doesn't agree with any of the points that were made, and we are meeting with him in order to resolve that. So that will be resolved, and when we're resolved, we have already passed, we've heard on the 12th of February the assessment criteria. So it isn't true that there are no assessment criteria for the community housing redevelopment mechanism.
Can I just comment on that? There are two sets of criteria here. I think this is probably where the confusion lies. The urban design criteria, they remain in place. There was a set of criteria that sought to ensure that a diverse housing mix was encouraged in the social housing schemes. That remains for the comprehensive development area, these wider market-based areas. But in these social housing areas, community housing redevelopment mechanism areas, that requirement wasn't carried through by the Minister. So, you know, the diversity of housing there may be more limited, I think it's fair to say.
So it will remain social housing rather than
it was more
mixture.
about unit sizes. So I mean, the criteria really tried to ensure that there was a mix of 1, 2, 3 bedroom houses instead of perhaps blocks with just 2 bedroom or just 1 bedroom, which wasn't particularly diverse. So that's the distinction.
But there will be a mix in these ones?
Philosophically, the social housing stock in Christchurch is reasonably well spread. There are some intensities in some streets, so we don't want to intensify the social housing stock, but we certainly want to retain our numbers in areas like Shirley and Brimmer. So when we build more stock, we want to retain the numbers we have, but because the land's being used more effectively, there's more stock. We will, in a way, dilute our social presence, if that makes sense. Overall, our approach on this type of development is we would take out what we put in, okay?
So you would house the same number?
If you had 13 houses on the property and you're now building 30,
we'd want 13. We'd want, But when we do that is another question. But as a minimum, we'd want the 13 back in a new build form. So we'd hold our numbers. Yeah.
All right, I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And we will now adjourn for lunch, and we will be back here, I'll say, in half an hour, so at 1:10. Thank you.